Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or good evening, wherever it is that you are uh, tuning into from, and wherever part of the world you may be in. Good day for everyone. Uh, let's continue on today with today's soul formation journey to understand ourselves better and understanding how to understand the way God wanted us to live, our creative force wanted us to live, and uh, get an idea of what that means and how we can start to apply it today. There is a simple mantra that I've kind of developed, and I would like us all to kind of um, start to do this together. This is something that I say regularly. I think it's very helpful for people, and I'm going to say it. And what I'd like you to do is you can stay muted, or you can feel free to unmute it. But I'd like you to repeat it after me, because this is a very helpful mantra that we need to set as our default way of thinking, our default way of going through life when life has its ups and downs. And that mantra or that prayer or that default setting in your mind, I want you to engrave it into your into your minds. I want to engrave it into your brains, tattoo it on the inside of your eyelids so that you always have it there whenever things happen. And that mantra is this: sometimes life gives us a test. I do not like it. I do not understand it, but I trust you. Okay. So I want you all to repeat that with me. I'm going to say that again, and you can just say it right after me. Sometimes life gives us a test. I do not like it. I do not understand it, but I trust you. So I want you to remember that and say it whenever those things come up. Say it regularly, so whenever life does have those speed bumps, you immediately know to trust in a greater power to handle it, because we are not smart enough to operate our own lives, and we need to have trust in something higher than us in order to get through, in order to take care of those things. That's a really helpful phrase that I've seen that has been very beneficial to people. So today, let's talk about our ability to choose the thoughts that we give power to. Now, in previous soul formations, maybe a month ago, I started talking about science, and I started talking about how science is the science that we hear today, that masquerades as what we would call science, is a non-pluralistic body. It's not it doesn't allow opposition on the other side. What this means is it's not really science, even though it masquerades as that, because science is a method of inquiry, investigation, asking questions, looking at the opposing views, looking at their information, and taking what we need to and maybe disregarding it. Um, so yeah, we'll definitely type that mantra here. Okay. Sometimes life gives us a test, and hey, that test can be anything from a flat tire to your child being off course in life, to a lab test that wasn't the best. Maybe somebody turned their back on you, a deal went sour, your business is slowing down, whatever it is. Those aren't for you to try to figure out. Sometimes life gives us a test. I do not like it. I do not understand it, but I trust you. But I trust you. And why is that important? Because whenever I was talking about this science, this new science, it proves to us without any, this is an absolute fact, not a relative fact, that there's a field of intelligent energy we could call source, we could call God, that is responsive to a language, responsive to a language, and that language is human emotion. Last week, I had a patient who I've discussed this with share with me that in Kansas City, in her area where she lives, it's been very dry lately. And I told her how to pray rain, not pray for rain, pray rain. And she said, I told her, because she was talking about her garden drying up and her crops needing really, a lot of water, and how it's just really dry, dusty there in Kansas City. They haven't had a lot of rain. And I told her to go out, see the rain falling and feel it touching your skin and smell that rain and give thanks for it. So pray as if it's already happened and give thanks for it. Don't pray like, please God, let it rain here, but pray as if it's already happened. And I told her that. And the next month at our follow-up appointment, she said, every cloud that goes by now in Kansas City, it's raining. So just a simple example of how powerful we are and how the language of our emotion, she was feeling as if it was already raining and thanking the rain for happening before she saw it. Okay. So how many of you have heard the phrase ask, believe, and receive? Well, many of us ask for things. Many of us don't ask. First off, we don't ask because we allow our logical mind to get in the way, and we don't see a possible way of how we could ever get what we want. Maybe it's a new establishment, a new business. Maybe it's a new higher income level, a healing of a loved one, or healing of ourselves, something like that. Many of us don't ask because we don't feel worthy of asking. Then there's many people that ask and never receive, and they're asking with their voice and not their emotions. They're asking with an outer stoic side of themselves, the conscious mind, and not the inner feeling side of themselves, which is the subconscious mind. And you will not have any power behind your prayers if you only pray with your conscious mind. Your conscious mind has the power of an automobile engine. Your subconscious mind, which is your feeling mind, your emotional mind, has the power of the Milky Way galaxy behind it. So if you're going to pray, you want to pray with power. You want to pray with feeling. You want to pray with emotion. And you begin the process of, as you begin the process of working with this great power, first, you want to start by observing your thoughts that you most often dwell on. Because I don't care how much you practice mindfulness, how much, how pure your heart is, how much faith you have. It is just not possible to get to a place where negative thoughts don't come into your heart. Now, I have worked extensively. I shared in the group yesterday with my students in our university that this is a true story. I've never had a mentor in my life that has worked this hard on clearing out their own stuff internally as I have. Now, I've had great proxy mentors that I haven't met through books and maybe, I've met a few in person like Greg Braden and things like that are absolutely outstanding. Bruce Lipton, Michael Beckwith. But I've never had a mentor close that I spent a lot of time with, that I learned real intensive stuff with, that ever worked as diligently as I did on himself. So I've worked on basically gaining health. And what would health be? Connection to wholeness, connection to that wholeness that the trauma takes you away from. Many people can have cures. Many people can have relief of symptoms through taking an aspirin, taking a supplement, taking something like that. They can have temporary relief of the symptoms, but are they whole? No. Are they healthy? No. Because you're not going to be whole and healthy until, you're not going to be healthy until you're whole. Okay. That's a whole nother talk. I have cleared much of my trauma, but I can tell you right now, there's just not any place to where the negative thoughts don't occasionally come. So no matter how hard you work on yourself, no matter how whole you become, or how diligent you are about working on your self-mindfulness and things like that, we don't get to a point where we don't get the negative thoughts. They're always going to pop up. And the reason why is our brain is more like a transitioner, like a radio. A radio doesn't generate music. You can't bust open a radio and see a little band in there playing. It tunes into something that's already there. It tunes into matching the signal of that radio wave and transition into a music that we hear. Our brain works the same way. It's not a generator of consciousness. It tunes into consciousness. And we actually, because of this, our brain has the capability of picking up the thoughts of others. Yes, I've looked at the research. Many people have heard that you can take an aspirin for a heart attack prevention. You know, the effect of that, taking an aspirin at the first sign of a heart attack, the actual measurable effect scientifically is 0.03%. So such a small impact from taking an aspirin to possibly prevent a heart attack. 0.03%. That's the actual what the data indicates. Telepathic, on the other hand, has been measured and evaluated. It's 0.11. So telepathic abilities between people is actually 6 times greater scientifically validated than an aspirin preventing a heart attack. So our brains will pick up the thoughts of others. That's my whole point. When you hear or feel an emotion that's unwelcome in your head or on your body, the fastest way to de-escalate an emotion you don't want is just to ask yourself, is this mine? Is this mine? And you can quickly notice it loses its potency, because your neurology must answer any question you ask it, and it doesn't answer in a verbal language. Okay, remember, the language or the code of the universe, the verbal language is not it. The language, the code of the universe is frequency, vibration, not a verbal language. Verbal language is not what gets God's attention. So let's get back to those negative thoughts. Sometimes they just pop up, coming out of nowhere. You can't avoid them. Sometimes they're discouraging. Sometimes they say things like your dream doesn't seem possible. Maybe you won't ever feel like you get that healthy relationship you desire. Maybe your diagnosis you have is you've been told it'll be there forever. There's no way to heal it. Maybe you feel like you won't heal. It would have happened by now, you know, your business slowed down, you know, all these negative, discouraging thoughts can pop in and you're feeling like, what are you going to do? And the most obvious enemy of faith, which is a feeling, by the way, it's not a stoic outer verbalization, it's a feeling. The most obvious enemy of faith is fear through deception and lies. And because your mind is like a transistor radio, the enemy of our faith, of our fear, of the enemy of our faith, which is fear, has a specific target, and that target's our mind. Because your mind works like a transitional radio, it is the target of these deceptions and fear. So naturally, if the enemy can control your thinking, and very specifically what you allow yourself to have emotional attachment to, what you get emotionally involved in, the enemy can control your life, period. And you cannot prevent negative thoughts from coming in. So you cannot do anything to keep negative thoughts from coming in. Not on this planet. Not on this planet. Maybe the next one. But here's the key on how to deal with this. Just because a thought comes into your mind doesn't mean you have to concentrate on it. Just because a negative thought comes in your mind does not mean you have to concentrate on it. You have full control of this. You can control the thoughts you give power to, and you alone determine what thoughts you choose to dwell on, because it is a choice. Sometimes we don't realize it because we can easily become addicted to those feelings. We can easily become addicted to those feelings that certain thoughts give us. And it may be a habit you got to get out of. Sometimes it's easier to gossip than to, you know, play ho'oponopono towards someone, which is, I love you, please forgive me, thank you. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Sometimes it's easier to let those addictive feelings that certain thoughts give you take control. But to break free of that elixir of stress hormones that many of us are addicted to, you must first become aware of it. The scripture tells us in Proverbs 4:23, watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. It's basically saying guard your mind and guard your thoughts, because they will determine how you live your life. Now, recall what I said earlier, but science is showing us with an absolute fact that there's a field of intelligent energy, and that energy reflects back to us what we feel and what we're emotionally vibrating. The language of our heart pointed out in the scripture here, speaks to the stuff our world is made of. The language of your heart speaks to the things our universe is made of. Quantum particles. And here the scripture saying, guard your mind and your thoughts, because they will determine how you live your life. And what we see here is guarding your heart, for from it flows the springs of life. That means as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It has nothing to do with the thoughts in your brain. It has nothing to do with the verbal language. It's how you feel, the emotions you carry most of the time. Be very selective in what you allow yourself to dwell in. Be very selective on what thoughts that you concentrate on. If you have a negative thought, which there's really no way on this planet to prevent those from popping in your mind occasionally. A negative thought, if you have a negative thought, and here's how to define a negative thought, because sometimes people say, well, what's a negative thought? Simple. Is it taking you in the direction that you want in life? Is it taking you in the direction you want in your life? You know, we all have hopes. We all have desires. We have dreams. We want to do something. We want to achieve something. You want to heal. You want your business to thrive. You know, you want your family to come together and be very loving to each other. Is that thought you're dwelling on taking you in the direction in life that you want to go? Because if it's not, I can promise you it's taking you the other direction. That's how you define a negative thought. And if that negative thought comes into your mind, discourage, worry, bring in fear, you know, do yourself a favor. Don't let it stick around. Reject it out immediately. You have that capability. Reject that idea right out. You have the ability to kick out any thought right away that is not taking you in the direction you want to go. Don't dwell on it. Don't give it any time of the day. Many times people don't even notice these thoughts pop up. They don't even think about it. We just allow them in. We allow them to take space up in our mind. And next thing you know, we're going around the rest of the day feeling worried, fearful, intimidated by things, because we're not even aware that we're giving that power away. Start right now. Can I suggest you begin to pay attention to what you're dwelling on? When fear comes into your mind, nothing good's going to happen to me. Why even bother? It's no good. Why have my hopes up anyway? I'll just be disappointed again. Before you let those thoughts take up space and any more time in your mind and take up any deeper roots in your mind, you want to ask yourself, is this helping me? Is this moving me in the right direction? Am I using my power correctly? Am I speaking to that universal mind correctly? Am I giving God the message I want God to have? Am I thinking the way God would want me to think? And if you're dwelling on any of that, I promise you, you're not using this power that God put in you. You're not using it correctly. That is the enemy of faith doing what he does best. Planting negative seeds into your mind. In Isaiah, God says, if you will keep your mind stayed on me, I will keep you in perfect peace. And that's the whole purpose we did that mantra in the beginning. Because things happen. Things happen in life. But you don't have to understand it. You don't have to like it. But you need to trust. And when you trust with your heart, when you trust with your feelings, you're sending a very powerful, very clear message out. So what is it your mind is constantly staying on? What's the focus that you're on your day? Do you watch the news? Do you pay attention to the election going on right now? How about the economy? Those interest rates going up? I'm not saying to be naive of these things. I'm not saying to be completely naive about the things going on. But I am saying be very selective of what you give power to. Be very selective of what you give your emotional attention to. The right approach is, yes, there's uncertainty. I don't know how it's turning out, but God, I trust you. Just as you take care of the birds, you take care of the fish in the ocean, I know you'll take care of me. Does any one of you right now in this moment in the room that you're at suddenly feel like there's not enough air in the room for you to breathe? Do any of you have that awareness that suddenly there's just not enough air in this room for me to breathe? No, I didn't think so, because most people don't think that way. Of course, unless they have like COPD or something like that, but it's not a problem with the air and the capacity of the air. It's a quality of their ability to breathe it. It's a matter of their ability to utilize that air. Just like the air in the room, fulfilling our needs that we don't even think about, shift your attention to knowing all your needs are met. All your needs are met. Always holding breath, okay? Always holding breath. It's probably some memory that came about, because many times when we have a traumatic experience, and in the last group I was in this morning, I was just in a group and they brought up trauma, and there's a lot of talk about trauma, and in my opinion, trauma gets talked about in the wrong environment incorrectly. It's a catchphrase thrown around. Many people say, I was traumatized by this and this traumatized me. I watched that movie and it traumatized me. No, it didn't. It stressed you out. But then at the same time, trauma is not mentioned where it should be mentioned in the functional medicine doctor's offices. And even if it is mentioned, it's very stoic in the way that it's brought up. It's not mentioned in whenever we talk about chronic illnesses and conditioning and things like that. But when a person has a traumatic experience, one of the first things that happens to them is they hold their breath. They take a deep breath in. And I've worked with people that have had memories, okay, that interfere with that. So in my book, as just a real basic way to get started, in my book, if you haven't got my book and read it yet, there's ways of deleting that memory that can be very easy for you to access that part that's keeping you from that's making you have the need to hold your breath, and maybe help you get past that, okay? But the right approach, instead of all this stuff giving emotion to, again, is, yes, there's uncertainty. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but God, I trust you. As you take care of the fish, as you take care of the birds, I know you'll take care of me. And that's why we did that mantra, okay? Sometimes life gives us a test. I don't like it. I don't understand, but I trust you. Instead of keeping your focus on the problem and on the news and on doubt, on worry, fear, keep it focused on God. Now, here is very simple. When a negative thought comes into your mind, you want to erase it and replace it. You don't just want to kick it out. You don't just want to erase it. You don't just want to shift it. You want to kick it out of your mind and shift your focus on something else. Okay? It's not enough just to kick it out, because once you dismiss it, once you decide that you're not going to dwell on it, you've actually created a void. And nature abhors a void. A void is very disgusting to nature, and it will fill it right away. And you might notice if you try to kick out a negative thought, it comes back very quickly. You kick it out, it comes back very quickly. You want to, anytime you have something negative, you remove something negative from an energetic system, it'll quickly be filled with something else. So this means if you kick out a negative thought without replacing it, the negative thought will return soon. Once you kick it out, replace it with something else. Replace it right away with something else. I have people throughout the years think of a pet, or maybe an accomplishment their child did, or something about their child that really warms their heart. Or, people have strong emotional bonds to pets nowadays. Think of your pet, kick that out, and immediately think of your pet, and suddenly you can fill that void with something else. And what happens to the vibration of your body? What happens to the emotional elixir that you're giving off? It quickly shifts and changes. And much more importantly, you're sending a completely different message out to the universe. Okay? So kick out a negative thought, replace it right away. Once you kick it out, replace it with a nourishing thought. Don't leave a void. When a negative thought comes, dismiss it, and replace it with a positive one immediately. And the neuroscience says that we have around 60, I think it's, 60,000 thoughts a day, 60,000 thoughts a day, anywhere from 15 to 50 per hour. So our mind is constantly bouncing all over the place. And whenever we have these thoughts, there's a good chance that 90% of them are repetitious. So we're constantly thinking the same thing we did yesterday, and the same thing we did before, the same thing we did the day before that. And we're ultimately recreating the same scenarios in our life without even knowing it. So let me give you some advice. Start really keeping a close eye on what's coming up into your mind. Keep an eye on what are you dwelling on. Ask yourself, what am I thinking on? What's the sum total of what I'm thinking about right now, what I'm feeling right now? And just simply ask yourself, is it taking you in the direction that you want to go? Because if it's not, I can promise you it's taking you in a direction opposite of that. So I hope that all makes sense. Put this into practice right away. This was one of the first things that I started doing on my journey of becoming whole. Okay. And am I entirely whole? No. I think there was maybe a few individuals on earth that ever achieved that. Most of us are going to be working towards it, even till our last day on earth. I'm significantly more whole than I've ever been. I don't get triggered by things. I can go for weeks on end without getting upset about a rock hitting my car, or this not going right, or that appointment taking too long. I have to schedule a guy to come out and look at my well, and I'm kind of finding out that it's going to be a couple months before he can even get out to look at my well on my property. All these things happen, and we've been trying to contact somebody to come look at our water filters on our well. It'll be a couple months. I could get upset about that, or I could say, I don't like it. I don't understand, but I trust you. And look at the areas in your life where you could start to apply that simple principle to. It might not seem like much. It might not seem like much is happening, but I can tell you that you are literally a magnet. Your body is a magnet. If you look at the torus field that surrounds the human body, something we work close within this holographic manipulation work, this toroidal field that surrounds our body and is measurable with instruments, looks just like it looks like it would if you took a magnet and you sprinkled iron fillings around this magnet. Can you imagine what would happen? You'd see those filings forming a circle around that magnet. It's the same thing if you Google Earth's electromagnetic field. You see the same shape around the Earth. We have it around us. We have it around magnets. It's around galaxies. It's around all living things. It's around dogs. It's around whales. It's actually around horses, and it's actually 3 times bigger on horses than it is on a human being. Horses' magnetic field from their heart is 3 times bigger than ours. That's why when you walk up to a horse, you'll notice if you're feeling, not thinking, you're feeling, you're talking to that language of the universe. When you walk up to a horse, you're going to notice as you get closer and closer to that horse, suddenly you get to a point where you feel really calm. Suddenly you notice, man, this horse feels really nice. It feels really nice to be around this horse. You won't even know it. You don't even know what's going on, but you can feel it. That's the code of how the universe operates. And what you're feeling is the magnetic field that horse is giving off, providing the horse hasn't been traumatized and abused its whole life, because then it might be a different sensation you're picking up on. But just the other day, I walked up to 2 horses in the field, and you can sense it. You can walk right up to a horse, and before you know it, you can feel their electromagnetic field. Well, guess what? You have the same thing. How do you put your fingers and hands on the steering wheel of controlling that? How do you control what you're going to attract or repel in your life? By what your thoughts are dwelling on and what your emotions are resonating with. So start right now. Pay close attention to the thoughts that you're having through the day and ask yourself, is this serving me? Is this helping me go in the direction I want? And if it's not, just use that simple mantra of, I don't like it, I don't understand, but I trust you. Thank you all for joining me today, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you. Have the best day, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Gabe.
You're welcome. Bye-bye,
Thank
everyone.
you so much, Dr. Gabe. Have a great day.
You're welcome, everyone. Bye-bye.